to our, welcome everyone to our Global Chamber author event. This is the 7th in a series of 8. And if you've missed any of them, the good news is they're being taped. And you can visit the Global Chamber YouTube channel to catch up, because what you're learning from these authors is nothing but amazing, just totally amazing. Today, our subject matter is going to be on healthcare and on home care. So we're going to start with Rick Shapiro, and I'm going to read you a little bit about Rick here, and then we're going to turn it over to him. We're going to do this in 3 phases. First, everybody's going to share their inspiration. Then I'm going to go back to everyone for them to share a bit about their content, why they developed that content. And then the third, what is the benefit to you? That's how this program is going to go. So Rick Shapiro, to start, is a former practicing attorney, consultant, and researcher in the field of safe cancer treatments. And by the way, I am a cancer survivor. His commitment to inform people of cutting-edge therapies that are saving lives and enhancing the quality of life brings real hope to people affected with late-stage and terminal cancer prognosis. As a passionate advocate, Rick collaborates with internationally renowned cancer specialists. He has consulted with and coached patients throughout the United States and all over the world. Rick has interviewed hundreds of people who have met cancer challenges and who are enjoying life years later. He is a member of numerous cancer associations and a board member of 2 national nonprofits that are dedicated to spreading the word about the profound value of evidence-based, integrative, and complementary cancer treatments. Rick, what was your inspiration to write Hope Never Dies?
Well, I wrote this book, Hope Never Dies, for several reasons. My inspiration, the seminal rationale for my inspiration came when my father died of cancer in 1996. And I saw him go through the horrific effects of chemotherapy. I won't even describe what I witnessed, but it was horrible. I started wondering if there was a better way. He passed away in 96 rather quickly. And in 2001, I had a scare myself when I was told I needed to have a biopsy on my liver because I went to increase my insurance. They took blood, and my insurance and my enzymes, liver enzymes, were climbing through the stratosphere. And I was suddenly having discomfort right where my liver is. They did an ultrasound, a CAT scan. They took 8 vials of blood, and they didn't come up with anything, but they said, we want to do a biopsy in your liver. So I went to my primary care physician, and I said, what do you think? He said, I don't think you have liver cancer, but you may want to do this biopsy. And biopsies of the liver are not very pleasant. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal. Let's wait 30 days. And if I can start bringing my numbers down towards the normal range, we will put off this biopsy. They said, you have a deal. So quickly, in 30 days, I made radical changes to my nutritional habits. I used to have what's called the standard American diet, which is very sad, SAD. And in making transformational changes to my nutritional habits, I was able to bring my stratospheric liver enzyme numbers to the normal range. That plus a few evidence-based supplements that I took. They were astounded. They said, no, you don't have to do a biopsy. Your liver enzyme numbers are normal. So that made me wonder about whether nutrition could alter the disease process. And one more thing, I went to a cancer conference in the year 2010. I've since been to 40 conferences. And as Gloria mentioned, I'm on the board of a couple of major conference groups around the country. After going to this conference in Florida with open-minded skepticism, I got back on the airplane and said, you know what, after listening to numerous doctors, scientists, and people dealing directly with late-stage cancer, I said, you know what, there is something to this integrative, complementary, and alternative approach. And from there, I took a deep dive into research. So the inspiration came from my father when he passed away. My grandfather passed away from cancer. And I just took a deep dive into the research and wondered if there was something beyond or inclusive of the standard of care, because I think the standard of care is overly rigid. And we can get into that more down the road.
Thank you, Rick. One of the things I picked up from your talk just now is that the role the mind plays in the healing process. I am such an advocate of that. And I think there's no better book than a book that's written by an author who's been there, done that, experienced it, because that makes the book filled with truth. So thank you for that. I know we're going to come back to you. Next, we're going to talk to William Harding. Now, we don't have him video, but we do have him audio for some technical reasons and those things do happen. So I want to introduce at this time, William Harding. William Harding is a distinguished technical fellow with 39 years of industry experience, 23 plus years at Medtronic. He is a member of Medtronic's Advanced Technologies and Data Sciences Department, which focuses on technology within manufacturing and healthcare environments. William has numerous technology-related patents and trade secrets. William's professional career spans environments such as missile testing, drug interdiction, rechargeable battery manufacturing. I loved it when you put the Energizer. I certainly know about the Energizer Bunny. We all know that one. And biomedical engineering. On a personal note, he shares that as a fifth generation Floridian, he will always have salt air in his lungs and beach sand between his toes. Now, doesn't it sound wonderful right now? I love that. On another note, William, I saw a comment on the LinkedIn feed from Virginia Counts, and I'm going to read it to everyone. Quote, because it made me curious even more about you. Quote, should be a great talk, very informative. I always love hearing what William Harding is up to. That being said, William, what was your inspiration to write Mobile Medicine, Overcoming People, Culture, and Governance? And William, you're on. Are you there? Okay, we don't have William. I gave you his bio. Evidently, we have a technical problem, so we will come back to him, but we do have his bio. So we'll move on. Okay, I see you, William. Go for it, William. Just go off mute. There you go. William Harding, you can begin with your inspiration to write your book. Audio? Okay, are we okay now? Okay, I'll tell you what, William, while you try to get one more second. I'll come back to you. Okay, we're going to come back to William and then he'll share. So we'll move on to Debbie Howard. She's there, I see her. Debbie Howard is chairman at the Carter Group Japan Market Research Network. Debbie lived and worked in Japan for 30 plus years. She founded Japan Market Resource Network in 1989, merged in 2012 to form Carter JMRN. Debbie translates consumer research into clear strategic direction for global clients across a wide range of categories. She also served as president and chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce in Japan. Debbie is also a former caregiver on a mission to change the way the world looks at caregiving so the impacts are not so devastating. Her work focuses on providing companies with support programs for working caregivers to mitigate the related risk of absenteeism, employee turnover, and extra healthcare costs. With the launch of AMI and the Caregiving Journey in 2016, Debbie brought her market research to the world of caregiving. Debbie, what was your inspiration to write The Caregiving Journey?
Thank you so much, Gloria. It's great that I could follow Rick, because my mom was also diagnosed with cancer, and my experience in the world of caregiving came as a big surprise to me. I had been working and living in Tokyo, running my business there, and one day I got the call. It happened to be a day when I was lying in bed and thinking, wow, this is going to be the summer of Debbie. And it wasn't the summer of Debbie. It was the summer of caregiving and the beginning of caregiving. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and given 1.5 years to live. And of course, you don't know at the beginning how long it's going to be. She did go through 2 chemotherapy courses, Rick, and I can't say enough bad things about it. And it was really, really hard for all of us. I basically started traveling back and forth much more frequently from Tokyo, and then ultimately moved back to live with my mom and serve as her caregiver 24/7 for the last 6 months of her life. I'm the eldest of 3 daughters. And there were the three of us were spotting each other for the first year. But after 1 year, both of my sisters' FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, was finished, which shows you how fast that goes. And I, being an entrepreneur, was the only one with the wherewithal to go live with my mom and help her, because she really could not live on her own anymore. And, that experience was really quite traumatic for all of us, as you can imagine. We had the advantage of having a very good plan. My mother had sat us all down 10 years before she was diagnosed, and we knew what she wanted, and we knew she wanted to die at home if at all possible. And so we were able to help her because we had those kinds of supports in place. She also had long-term health care. And of course, many people in our country don't have that. So I had all the advantages on the good side, and still it was devastating emotionally, physically, and even financially. So that was my inspiration to write my book.
Thank you, Debbie. As I listened to you, I even remembered my mother, who had breast cancer twice. And in her later years, we did have to put her into a caregiving environment. So I really experienced from all directions everything that we're talking about today. Now, yes. William, are you on audio now? Now we're really curious about you. If we can bring you forward.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, now you give us your inspiration. We're so curious.
And I have to apologize to everyone. So this is where I'm at. If you can see. So I'm in Yosemite. I don't know if you can see the audio,
yeah.
but I'm in Yosemite outside of Pergola, about 100 yards from my room, where I got the best signal. Hopefully that came across. Can you hear me okay?
Just go for it.
What's that?
Go for it.
Perfect. So my inspiration is during a routine skydiving event. I have about 2,400 skydives, and I was jumping to film a tandem. I wasn't paying attention to my landing, and I ended up going through the power lines, and twisting both my legs around, splitting my hip open, and ended up getting a neuro device that for pain control. And during that time of recovery, so about 2 years I didn't walk. I decided to get my act together, and I said, not let this be a barrier or hold back from accomplishing my goal. So at that point in time, I decided to go back for my master's and completed that. Also do my doctorate. I'm completing it in the next month or two, as soon as my dissertation completes signs off on it, around integrating technology. But I decided to really refocus on a lot of things forward-looking, not back to the regret, the things I had. The point of that is, as Floridian, like Gloria said, five generation Floridian, I have that lifestyle that makes me want to get out there and enjoy nature. And obviously, I'm here in Yosemite. But as I went through this trauma, I had to have an amputation on my left leg. And it turned out to be the impetus for a lot of devices and technologies and things I create, from pacemakers and neuro devices. But particularly the prosthetic, a wearable
was the stimulant for me to write about in the chapter book there around mobile robotics, you know, as far as wearable robotics, and what I could do to move beyond just providing what the person needed or repairing what they had lost, but as some of my students said, making the person supernatal. So for me, this accident, the prosthetic, the even embedded neuro device, that's led to a couple of patents of mine. The neural leg actually filed on a number of patents for polymag. It's really been a vehicle for me to create more technologies, specifically around what I call wearable robotics.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The technology does bring its challenges, but you know what? Like that good old Energizer bunny, we just keep on keeping on, whatever way it takes, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I wore that bunny suit once, so I know what it's like.
I love that bunny. I just love it. I use it a lot. We just heard everyone's inspiration to write their book, and I think that when you've had the personal experience that goes into the writing of your book, you create the inspiration, you make it real. But the next very important step is to learn more about the content you decided to put into that book. So we're going to go back to Rick. And Rick, if you would share something about the content of your book.
What I did was, in my book, I interviewed 20 people who had all kinds of cancer, from lung, prostate, breast, brain, pancreatic, melanoma, ovarian, uterine, colon cancer, etc. All of whom were diagnosed, who had prognoses which were rather dire, stage 4 and/or terminal cancer. Most of them were given a year or less to live by major cancer centers in this country. So I interviewed them as to what they did. By the way, they're all here 10, 20, 25 years later, and confounded the so-called experts who said that they had a very short expiration date. So the content that was derived from these 20 interviews was fascinating as to what the different people did. There were many different approaches. Some people had very specific integrative approaches where they would go with standard of care. They might do something a little different than chemo or radiation oncology. Many of them utilized the value of what I'll call nutritional oncology, very much evidence-based nutrition, based specifically on their type of cancer and objective criteria, meaning blood work and sometimes tissue samples, especially in the chemo arena. Also, evidence-based supplementation. There are supplements that can be profoundly beneficial, again, based on particular, specific, personalized situations, not generic. Also, you talked about the mind, the power of the mind. Certainly, attitude is critical. If you go into any tough or daunting endeavor with a negative attitude, it's not going to work well. And stress reduction is also very critical, whether you reduce stress through meditation, prayer, laughter, or other techniques. There's lots of things to do to reduce stress, because stress weakens the immune system, and we need a strong immune system to fight cancer. Also, exercise and many other modalities. In addition to interviewing 20 people, and I've talked personally, Gloria, to over 500 people who were given terminal diagnoses or prognoses, and they're here 20 years later. Again, I've been to about 40 conferences. I interviewed 5 renowned healthcare practitioners. Most of them are MDs and some PhDs in there, who are experts in the integrative and complementary world, and who are saving lives now, today. And that's the second part of the book. The third part of the book are 83 absolutely critical questions you must ask your prospective cancer doctor before hiring him or her. Now, I don't expect anyone to ask 83 questions, but it's a guide. Don't be a sheep. Be a cancer scholar. There's a place in this world for the cancer warrior, but there's also a place for the cancer scholar. So my point is there's many things that one can do, which is found in the content, to profoundly strengthen your immune system and cytotoxically attack cancer cells, attack tumors, in addition to standard of care. Some people, in fact, did not go the standard of care route at all. They just took an alternative route. The integrative is the best of both worlds. Alternative is in lieu of, in place of standard of care, who also are here 10, 25 years later, despite the fact they were given 3 weeks to live, 3 months to live, 6 months to live by major cancer centers, and they're here. So we need to reverse engineer and find out what they did. But the content is rich with data and information from real people about how they beat cancer.
Wow, that is mind-boggling to say the least, all those questions, but definitely very, very important. I like the comment you made about when you search out for your doctor, going from the scholar to the warrior. I think that's very important to know. And in cancer, I just want to add this. The cancer that I got, I didn't even know I had. I didn't even know I was sick. It was one of those things where you get this extreme pain, you end up in ER, and then you find out you have something called carcinoid. And carcinoid is rare, and it's usually found when they do an autopsy because they were treating you for something that was wrong. So I got lucky because I got a surgeon in ER who recognized exactly what was going on, and that's why I'm here sitting here talking to you today. So it's very, very important to get the right doctor who has a background in that particular kind of cancer and knows how it operates.
And
So
just for just 10 more seconds, it's a good idea to get several opinions. It's fine to get an opinion from a conventional oncologist. Also, there are integrative oncologists, and there are also healthcare practitioners who are absolute cutting-edge experts in the nutritional oncology world, in the supplementation world, and who bring other modalities to the table that can coalesce for a multifaceted approach that can really enhance your outcome dramatically.
At this point, what I would like to say is, as each of you share your content and the value, if any of you want to chime in, like Rick and I just did back and forth, please feel free to do so. Just jump in. That being said, we're going to move over to Debbie.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, William, are you ready to go? Are you good?
No, I just want to make sure you can hear you okay. I was
yeah.
Sure
but if you want to, if you want to go ahead and share your content.
Oh, sure.
Right now.
I thought that's what you were asking, but Debbie, you can go next.
William, you go.
Okay, sure.
You're up.
I like what Rick was saying, and like you said, Gloria, about picking the right doctor, because I look at the case of my skydiving accident, and it was 16 surgeries, $2.5 million. The whole deal. A lot of doctors you had to choose from. A lot of, like Rick said, get some second opinions. Make sure you get it done right. There were some mess ups, but that's the nature of, if you put yourself in that situation, things can, you own it. But to the point of even tying it to like the book thing that I've done is, when I think about wearable, you don't have to look at it as prosthetic. Look at everyone wearing an iWatch. Look at everybody wearing a diabetic pump, or you're wearing some other sensor. For instance, because of that event, when I actually ended up with prostate cancer last summer, and I said, okay, this was a drop in the bucket compared to what I've gone through. Got it removed, robotic surgery. I'm happy moving on. In comparison or perspective, that was nothing. That was a summertime fling when I thought about it. But when I look at what I can do with like the information in the book about interoperability, that's what we really are missing in healthcare. Is how do you get your sensing systems? How do you get your wearables? How do you get somebody who's at home and a caregiver is taking care of an elderly or a young child with type 1 diabetes? How do you get that all working together? And the point of that was to help people in the medical industry, healthcare industry, literally understand how to create solutions that don't use just emergency electronic medical records or electronic healthcare records, EMRs, EHRs, to create that connectivity. How do you really do it right? And so that was kind of the whole point of it. And like Rick said, building on that, building on what we're advocate for ourselves. Rick advocated for himself in getting second opinions. Same thing as you did, Gloria, I'm sure Debbie did too, is we don't just sit back like in the 1930s and wait for a doctor to say, this is what you got, this is what you do. We go out there, we look it up, we find out what we need to know, we collaborate with knowledgeable people to get the best quality of care. So I'm totally echoing what Rick had said and the lessons learned and some of the information that from my part of the book, what really emphasizes and the importance of that interoperability.
Okay, thank you very, very much. To add to that, and I didn't mention this earlier, that when the carcinoid was found, I'd actually been misdiagnosed 3 times previous, until I end up in ER that one night with the right doctor who had experience with that particular kind of cancer. So, again, finding the doctor with the background. And certainly if you don't know what kind of cancer you have, it's kind of hard to do. You just wish, you just pray for the right end result. That being said, let's go to Debbie with her content and learn how she put hers all together and why she put it together the way she did.
Thank you so much, Gloria. This is my book, The Caregiving Journey, Information, Guidance, and Inspiration. And my book is about the amazing opportunity that we all have to navigate our caregiving experiences by being proactive and by making choices. I loved what you said, Rick, about becoming a scholar on your condition and learning about that. Obviously, as a researcher, that really appealed to me. I took my experience. I also am a person who has values of not wasting things. And my experience with my mom as a caregiver was so traumatic that I could not imagine wasting that experience and not sharing it with other people in hopes that maybe somebody could do it better, even if one person could do it better. So again, we're talking about your parents, your grandparents, a spouse or a partner, it could be a friend. We know that we have a caregiving crisis in our world. And I basically used my research experience to interview 200 different caregivers from all different kinds of caregiving situations to feed into my book. And it's divided into 3 sections: planning, surviving and thriving, and relaunching your life when caregiving is done. And each section has top 10 tips for doing that and gives you my personal experience along with the experiences of others. I would also like to say that it took me 10 years after my mom passed away before I actually published my book. And that's because I went right from my mom's death into global financial meltdown. I think everyone here will remember that, in 2009. And I almost lost my business in Tokyo because of that, because I had been caregiving and went into that situation in a very weak position and rebuilt the business. And then in 2011, we had the triple disaster in Japan with the earthquake, the tsunami, and the nuclear meltdown. Again, I saw the burning tips on my airplane of a business going down. I managed to pull it out. And by around 2014, was able to refocus on my dream of writing the book. And it came out 3 years later. So that's my story of how the book came about and what's in it. Thank you.
Thank you. I love hearing those stories and how it all came about. And certainly when we come to this phase 3, the benefit to the reader, you've already heard some of the benefits through the inspiration, through the content, but there might be a few more things that our authors feel that you can walk away with. So I'm going to go back to each author and ask for them to offer you some good walkaways from their book that makes you, I can't wait to buy that book and get that book and start reading like now. Okay, we'll go back to Rick on that one.
Sure. When people are diagnosed with cancer, the first thing that happens is they are enveloped with fear. Fear and anxiety is, oh my gosh, they see their mortality flashing before their eyes. And it's a normal response. We're all human. But think about the word fear as an acronym, FEAR, forgetting every available resource. And there are many resources which we can tap into to enhance our health and to move forward and to bring about a great outcome. So don't forget to breathe. When you're told you have cancer, breathe. You may be nervous, you may be stressed out, but breathe and take your time. If your doctor on Thursday says we need to start chemo on Tuesday, I would call a timeout and say, hold on, I need to think about this a little bit, because it took many, many years for this cancer from its seminal stage of one little rogue cell to develop into this tumor. So you don't need to make an immediate decision unless this particular tumor is blocking a major function in the body or is moving like a freight train. So don't forget to breathe. Life is worth living, and don't be a statistic. When the doctor says, well, 80% of the people die of this in 6 months, or you have 6 to 9 months to live. Do not accept that, because there are so many. I'm here to tell you factually, there are so many, thousands and thousands of exceptions to that. Now, when they give you a statistic like that, they are basing that on masses. You are an individual. And most people do not implement effective, profoundly beneficial, evidence-based, keyword, evidence-based with lots of studies, therapies, and treatments. But those who do and do it effectively and comply and adhere to it with excellent doctors can frequently beat the odds. There are no guarantees, but they can frequently beat the odds. And if someone says you've got 6 months, maybe you'll be here 15 years later. I have met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who are walking in those shoes because they were proactive and became self-advocates and took this bull by the horns and did not let FEAR control them totally. So move forward and don't let it paralyze you. Cancer is a systemic disease, by the way. A lot of times we want a silver bullet, like a drug that's going to just solve everything for us. But when it's a systemic disease, we need to bring a multifaceted, comprehensive, intelligent approach to the table to beat or push back this, this foe called cancer.
Great advice. Thank you. Let's move to William. And what more can you add to your inspiration and content that are great walkaways for our readers?
And I like what Rick said, actually, about fear specifically. And regardless of having cancer and having a serious accident and so on, is what he's talking about is, first, you're not doing this alone. Don't try to do it alone. We're social creatures. We're humans that need to interact with others. Our strength is derived from that. And if anyone's not witnessed that when you are stressed and feeling down and your immune system is compromised and things start to weaken, they don't realize that that's what's happening because of the physiological aspects of stress and stuff, then you haven't experienced that power like Rick's talking about of working. We're not alone. We're working with other individuals. I think about me in my case, my accident. There were points in time that people said, you have a 1 in 3 chance of living. They told my wife I have 5 minutes to live, these type of things. And she jokingly said, he's been closer. And I thought that was amusing. But the point of that is I knew I wasn't alone. And I purposely pushed aside a lot of the negatives, the things that were going to weaken me. The same with the cancer scenario is that type of thing is I'm not going to let it consume me. I'm like Rick said, I'm not going to give up. This isn't the end of this, regardless of whatever stage it was in. So knowing that we can surround ourselves with that, and it's not to sound holistic, because again, like Rick has said, in evidence-based, as a scientist, you got to stick with evidence-based. It's not a holistic thing to say, if I'm feeling down, my immune system will respond to it. My stress can affect my gastral system, like it might affect my brain, my cardiac function. We know this exists. This is evidence, but it's not something holistic saying this crystal is going to make your energies better. This is real science that Rick's talking about and what I'm talking about also. So when you experience these things, sorry, the bugs are getting crazy out here. When you experience these things, you really do kind of have to surround yourself with that positive, to give yourself that energy, give your body that kind of extra boost you need. But when you're looking at information, if you're researching this, you're trying to understand. In academics, there's a lot of good work that's been done within the last 5 years that you can find evidence that says, this is what it is. This is what you can do. This is how you can heal yourself. So before you start grasping straws and heading off to Mexico for some weird chemical injection, look at the research, look at the science, but don't do it alone. Immediately communicate that, the stress, relieve that, get that out with the people, your family, the people, your circle. So I totally support what you're saying, Rick.
Thank you, William. Thank you very, very much. Empowering, to say the least. And now we're going to move to Debbie. And again, Debbie, through your inspiration, through your content, certainly the reader knows they're going to gain a ton of great information, but there might be just a few more things that are great walkaways for them to inspire them to read your book and benefit from it.
Well, I'm really interested in our conversation today because we're all about choices and being really proactive. And even when you're a caregiver, that's true. And that is the foundation of my book, is being proactive and making a choice to create a good caregiving experience for you and for your care receiver. I love the advice of breathing and practicing self-care. Self-care is a real underlying foundation in my book, and also getting help, asking for help, getting help, there is help. And Rick, I love your acronym FEAR. We forget that when we get into these emergency and very stressful situations. And we know that caregivers suffer. It's well documented, emotional strain and stress, physical strain and stress, and even financial strain and stress. And the effects can be in place for years after the care receiver has passed away. So I am very much encouraging people to look at the caregiving journey as an opportunity for personal transformation. It's a big and lofty idea, but you know what? It's a deep experience that can offer you that kind of transformation in your life. It gives you a chance to talk more honestly with your loved ones, to make plans, to perhaps be closer than you might have ever been before. So I really want to encourage everyone to look at the caregiving situation as an opportunity. And that's what my book is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to open up to questions, and certainly I welcome each of you authors to ask each other questions in a nice free-form way. But I'm going to start with this one because it's one we haven't talked about yet. It's one that I think is like the elephant in the room in many environments. And I'm going to address it originally first to Debbie, but certainly the other two can chime in on it. The question is, are there special considerations that companies should be thinking about in terms of bringing caregivers back during these COVID times? So COVID's the elephant.
Okay, thanks so much, Gloria. You know, caregivers have always struggled with remote and in-office work before COVID. COVID has made caregiving a really dangerous job, because if we start bringing, let's say, a caregiver has brought their parent home from assisted living, which many have, the idea of forcing them back into the workplace and allowing them to perhaps bring things back home where their aged parent or loved one is living now is a very real risk. We all live with the risk of watching our immune systems when we're caregiving. And it becomes even more important in a situation like this with COVID, Gloria. On the good side, I think what COVID has taught us is that remote work can work. Remote work can work. And so some caregivers have actually been able to show how productive they can be while being at home. It's still a very difficult thing to consider, because also when you're at home all the time with your care receiver, you really get no break, because work for me was a break, if you want to know the truth. And I think for many caregivers it gives you a sense of normalcy when you actually go to the office. So Gloria, our programs actually help companies to educate their caregiving employees, to give them tools as to how to be more productive at work and at home, and to manage the situation. That's pretty much all you can do with caregiving. You can't fix it, but you can manage it. And so we try to provide training and education to that effect to help companies to do that.
Thank
Debbie,
you. Yeah, I think this is good. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Who did I interrupt?
Sorry, Debbie, I had a quick question for you. This is William. Yeah. As a person in the healthcare industry also, and as a participant, often the world sees things in three forms: the patient, the healthcare provider, and the payer or the insurance provider. And to me, to you, as a person who's experienced this for a while, is how do we change that mindset to get people to realize it's almost like you're a father with a wife that's pregnant, that you're experiencing, this aspect of baby. How do we get the industry to recognize the value of the caregiver?
It's a great question, William. And there are many of us working in this area trying to amplify the role of the caregiver, the importance of the role on the care team. There are lots of interesting things happening in innovations and startups where there are programs that help the caregiver and the care receiver with support, with professional nursing and nursing assistant type support. There are so many great things happening right now, William, that it's hard to even keep up with them. COVID has really driven the train faster, if you will. And I think many of us who are working in this field, and again, there are many, many former caregivers working in this field very passionately. I think we just keep talking. We try to be strategic in the way that we get our messages out there, and we try to get pilots going and examples so that those become wonderful stories that we can tell, and more companies, more and more healthcare systems, everyone will listen and do more going forward. I'm a marketing person, William, so I believe in, yammering and spreading messages, and I believe in advertising when you can't draw a strong dotted line to it. I've been working in this space for over 10 years now, and before COVID, it was like screaming into a black hole. And sometimes it still is, but it's getting much, much better. COVID is our friend.
Just to tag on to what William said, I totally agree. Caregivers are so undervalued, and they are so valuable to any process, whether it's a nurse in a hospital, or a caregiver who's just in a hospice situation or some other type of situation. They are so valuable to the process and in terms of helping people. When you are in a hospital, the doctor might see you 10 minutes per day. But I learned when my father was suffering from his cancer dilemma that the nurses, some of them were so valuable and just made such a difference. So people really need to recognize that.
Well, that's why I was asking that. Is my wife had to put aside almost 2 years, 2.5 years until I could walk again every day. She didn't have to, but she did. And I give her full credit for my recovery, my health. They did a TV show about the accident and brought her in and all these things. But I really wanted to emphasize people like you, Debbie, in your role. That's what gave people like me and Rick probably in our roles, our role as the disease person, we'll say with the disease state, to be able to recover. And so to me, I really saw that as a role that isn't recognized in the industry. I think of also, as a side note, I think of a parent with type 1 diabetes child, and the child can't care for himself. But the parents checking the iWatch is like, oh, his A1Cs are down. I've got to go address him. That type of, it's really not set up to support that, to give them time to respond to that. And like you said, the COVID almost was a gift in some respects, to allow people to come back and meet those roles, those needs.
Yes, and I'm so excited about even this conversation today. Looking at this situation from so many viewpoints is a really important part of moving this conversation forward. I've been involved lately on Clubhouse, and we're having some amazing conversations there with doctors and healthcare industry participants and caregivers, and I think it's happening now. Actually, I think we are part of it. Thank you.
Something I'd like to interject in this, because something I just learned about. I have a 93-year-old father who finally has to give up his home because the oxygen, at the altitude where he lives in Flagstaff is not working for him. It's working against him. And he's very agile. He's in dementia, but not so strong that he doesn't know what's going on. He can sound very adept at some point, and other times he's very confused. But I just learned about something the VA does, and I don't know if any of you have heard of this, and I think it's amazing. It's a possibility for him. My mother actually went into a group home where it was a home with 10 residents, and that worked out for her, but that would never work for my father. So I think sometimes when you're looking for caregiving resources, you have to look for what is going to work with the personality of the family member you're trying to put there, as long as they're able to understand their environment, for the lack of saying it any better. But they have something called foster homes. And these are homes, CBS covered it, so if anyone wants the video, the VA did send me a copy of the video, I can send it to you. But these are foster homes where people are taking in vets. My dad's a World War II Navy vet, taking them into their homes and making them a part of their family. They only take 1 or 2 vets at a time, so they can feel like they're part of the family. So has anyone had that experience, or did you know about it? I think it's another great thing. It's what I'm looking into for my dad. I think it'd be more accepting for him.
I hadn't heard about that, Gloria, but it sounds wonderful. And I think for all of us, with our parents and other loved ones, you know, talking about these things before there's a problem is one of the things that I really advocate, because it's so much harder when you're all stressed and strained out and making decisions under duress. So I think, and I think it's so important to consider the desires of the person. As you said, your mom would be, she was happy in a 10-person small home, but your dad would not be. And we have to look at the person themselves. It's not about you as the caregiver and what you want to do and what makes it convenient for you. It's what does the person want, and how do they want their aging and dying to play out. Yeah. Only about 10% of our population gets to die at home. But everyone wants to. But most people die in medical settings or assisted living. So that's a very sobering statistic. You know, everyone wants to die at home and have the, you know, everyone around the bed and you know, the halcyonic experience, but that is not the reality. And you need to plan. If you plan and talk about things ahead of time, you have a fighting chance.
You know, you said something, Debbie, about everyone wants the die at home scenario. Is I think we can draw that across almost any aspect, and I think it's a good point to make. Is in the case of, you know, I'll use the example. I don't have children, but we had, you know, we always think of our puppies, our cats being our children, the animals and stuff. And when you said that, it made me think about even, you know, a cat I had for 18 years and always just giving me kisses. And I've got my puppies and tattoos of my puppies on my chest and stuff. But thinking that their last moment was going to be in some vet on a cold table or in an environment that just was stressing them out beyond what they were experiencing, you know, as a disease state. And it made me kind of you know, reflect on what you were saying and empathize with that need when I thought about our cat and somebody coming and just, he's watching Wuthering Heights with me of all things. And somebody gives him just something to help him go to sleep. And the person comes and picks him up afterward to get him cremated and stuff, but he never left the comfort of his house. And if I think about human, more evolved, the emotions, the things we need, the comfort, to be aware, like you just said, of what that person might experience outside of their comfort zone, I think is a key element. You know, we want that, and it's just not, my point is not just for humans, the way we care for things, period.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you very much. We do have a question in the chat, so we're going to go there and just grab the question if you feel like you want to answer it first or whatever. The first question is, what positive feedback have you received from your books that made all your hard work worth the effort? So if each of you could maybe take that one and maybe give it a minute.
I'll go. You know, I have a lot of guilt about my mom and the way that we fought during her dying days. And it was our real relationship. We were exactly who we were till the very end. And I can say that it was a blessing because she had cancer and not Alzheimer's. She was completely there. And we were able to actually argue and interface. But of course, I have a lot of guilt about that. And at the very end of my mom's life, I actually went on an international business trip and she died while I was gone. She died 24 hours before I got back there. And I have huge guilt and misgivings about that. But I say in my book, and I believe this in my heart, that I started my own relaunch before my mom actually died. And I think she would have wanted me to do that. I also have the wonderful experience of the last words my mother ever said to me being, "I love you," over the phone. And she was in South Carolina and I was in Australia doing this business trip. And I get chills telling you that story. And I told that story in a workshop once at a caregiving conference. And one of the women in the audience hand wrote me a note that she gave to me after the workshop. And she told me that she was sure my mother had forgiven me. And it meant everything to me. And, you know, there have been lots of other benefits of writing my book, and lots of people have said nice things, but that was the best thing and the most meaningful thing to me.
It would be a number of things for me, and I'll just show one more time on the book here, Hope Never Dies. When people say, you saved my life, or the content from your book saved my life, or I've decided to work with this particular doctor. And I mentioned there's 5 doctors in the book who wrote chapters, and I'm working with this particular doctor or this particular healthcare practitioner, and he or she are fantastic. They would not have known about those people without getting into the book, or reading the stories of people who walked in their shoes who had pancreatic cancer or glioblastoma, which is a terrible brain cancer, or lung cancer, who were told they had 6 months to live. And knowing that they're now here 15 years later, and knowing that there is hope and others walked in your shoes, that is critical. So those things that I hear from people directly at conferences, or people who call me, or just looking at the Amazon, Amazon book comments, makes me feel good, because I did want to make a difference in writing this book. So that's made it all worthwhile.
Thank you. And
So
William,
as soon as I get that unmute button hit, it's amazing how many sky crane helicopters are buzzing here in Yosemite. So you hear these buzzes. No, as a matter of fact, I'm building on what Rick said, and even thinking about the positive feedback that we received from the book, is I had the opportunity to work with 27 amazingly brilliant people from around the world on this. And again, almost like Debbie's saying about as a caregiver, and like Rick's saying about not going alone. The same in the book. When you're writing a book, it's not a Tesla thing where you do. I think there was a Tesla quote about Nikola Tesla saying about working alone, working in quiet. That's not what I perceive as innovation. Again, we are social creatures, and if it wasn't for the power of the team that I was part of, everything from the technical writers to the scrum masters, making sure sections were ready, keeping things timed, I doubt we would have had the success. The continued author meetings and stuff we have, the aspects that we're trying to continue, the social aspects. We reached 3 top areas in Amazon, #1 for medical informatics, biomedical and so on. And to me, that means we're reaching the people that we need to influence when they're creating these solutions that are just diagnosing or solving our disease states we have, or for even getting them. For instance, one thing I like what you said, Debbie, is a caregiver is a stakeholder in my terms, is a person that's a critical role. And I have actually identified it in my own parts of the book of saying, these are the stakeholders who should be critical, who have skin in the game. And so if our books combined can be those evidence or those elements that can influence people, say, if you want to create a solution that's going to take care of a person at home, the home hospital environment, or whatever, diagnostics and monitoring, how do you really appreciate the right people who have a voice? And how do you appreciate getting things to work together? That you're not thinking myopically old school around, like in my case, mobile medicine, or in areas of like wearable robotics, that there are possibilities. The things I could talk about that are protected by IP would blow your minds of what's coming out. So being stuck with what traditional medicine has said we had to use, it's not the case. There is so much more out there. So from a book writing point, I always encourage everybody to work as a team, to work together. Don't work in a bubble or a dark room. And as a person who really wants to get something across to like CTOs and CIOs of healthcare environments, is to start considering those relatable or relevant stakeholders beyond the tradition.
Thank you. I think in our closing, what I'd like all of you to close with, because this is a question in your chat, is just answer the question, I wish I had known before I started, what were those insights? And whoever wants to go first. Okay, Debbie. Okay.
So I wish three things. I wish I had known about meditation, because that would have helped me quite a bit during my time as a caregiver. I wish I had kept a journal. I'm blessed with a good memory, so I was still able to write the book, but I think I could have dredged up more if I had journaled. And the third thing is, I wish we had talked about the last 2 weeks of my mom's life and what was going to happen then. We had a lot of other things planned. We did not plan the last 2 weeks when it became way too much for my two sisters and I, three strapping 50-something-year-old ladies, right? Bossy ladies, could not handle all that had to be done in those last 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. How about you, Rick?
Regarding content, there's no changes in terms of I wish I had known, but I'll just say writing a book is, it's not easy. Whether you are self-publishing or you're working with an actual publisher, it doesn't happen in a nanosecond. It takes time to put the whole thing together, whether it concerns the inception of the ideas you want to convey, or the marketing component, or the book cover, or the editor or editors. And editors are different. They're not all the same. Some are better than others. But putting it together, I was fortunate. I went to a couple of book conferences, actually, one in New York, one in Las Vegas, before I wrote the book. I wanted to learn everything I could about how you write a book and what you do. But it's a major endeavor, and just keep on plowing ahead, and don't let it get you down when you hit a roadblock. Just go around that roadblock or a speed bump. Just go over it gently. So and William used a good word last time he spoke. He used the word myopic. And don't be myopic in your approach to writing a book. Look at things from a broad-based perspective, then you funnel in until you get to the important substance that you want to convey. But I have no regrets about any of the content. But if you decide to write a book, and we all have a book in us somewhere, we all have stories to tell. Just take your time and surround yourself, as William also said, collaboratively with intelligent people who know how to do this.
Exactly. I like that, Rick, because like, for instance, I do have the advantage of people that, have experience. Ours is with Taylor and Francis on Rutledge, our first book. We're already working on our next ones with working with NIH, and with Springer's example. We're already working on a third one, that's going to be also in healthcare, and we're getting ready to publish a number of technical papers. But it's a kind of a tribal knowledge thing. And like you said, the wish I would have known is I don't see any negatives. I wish I had known it would be this much fun, to write about this type, to really get it out there. And it may not be this topic that sounds fun, but to be able to express yourself and say these things and know that you're influencing or whatever is great. Even back to Debbie's point of a journal. One of the things I started doing is a reflexive journal. And I did that specifically as a way to make sure my own biases weren't influencing what I was writing. So in research, you think, well, I think the outcome is going to be this. That could be a bias that negatively influences how you're writing. You want to be balanced, understand your audience. So creating that reflexive journal was very helpful for me to constantly go back as I talked to part of the topic population that I was actually studying or whatever, is to be able to make sure I was remaining very objective and unbiased. So the journaling is a very good point, and it's a really cool way to reflect back on, wow, that's what I went through. But to like Rick's point of as I wish I had known, as again, I wish I had known that it was be this fulfilling, and I should have started sooner. So to me, this has been a great journey. There's a lot of takeaways from the three of us here that I think anybody who's starting out can do. But I think getting with some people who have experience was one of the strongest things that really strengthened my writing.
Thank you. I want to thank all three of you, Rick, Debbie, and William, for sharing today. I can actually hear the applause in the background. You just have to imagine it. And in closing, I want to let everyone know that we have one more. That doesn't mean we're done, though. I'm already working on a fall series, and the fall series is going to be more about where we are. I'm going to use the we word because I bring other people into this with me, anybody who has something they want to offer. But we want to share with you how to go about writing that book, how to create your chapters, should you self-publish or publish, all the mechanics behind what you achieved is where I'd like to go in the fall. We're going to have a celebration panel gathering rather in September sometime. You'll hear about that. But our next, what I really want to talk about right now is next week, which is the 8th in this particular series. And it will close with intercultural relations. And our authors are going to be Rochelle Kopp, and she's written 3 books. One, Valley Speak, Deciphering the Jargon of Silicon Valley, The Rice Paper Sealing, Breaking Through the Japanese Corporate Culture, and her 3rd book, The Lowdown, Business Etiquette Japan. Our second speaker will be Kyle Haggerty, and his book is The Accidental Business Nomen, A Survival Guide for Working Across a Shrinking Planet, and Terry Morrison, who wrote the big book, Kiss, Bow, Shake Hands, which has been around for, I think, the 1990s or early 2000s, but that was like my Bible book when I first got into international protocol. I am so pleased and honored that Terry Morrison is going to be joining us next week. That being said, I want to thank everyone for joining us and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye from Yosemite.